Trump just had the most successful weekend of his presidency, maybe of any presidency ever. We've got the details on that and what it means for you. Also, he is helping South African refugees resettle here in the United States. And surprise, surprise, Christian refugee ministries are very upset about it. We've got all of this and so much more on today's episode of Relatable with one of your favorite guests, my dad, Ron Simmons. This episode is brought to you by the Olive app. This is an app that allows you to see what is really in your food. I'm obsessed with it. I've been using it every day. I didn't know some of the things that are in my food are actually in there. It has made me a smarter decider of what I feed myself and what I feed my children. You've got to check this out. You can download the Olive app in the App Store for free. Check out the Olive app in your App Store. Before we get into that conversation with my dad, I want to tell you our two new speakers for Share the Arrows, brought to you by our friends at Good Ranchers. Share the Arrows, October 11th, Dallas, Texas. We've got Abby Halberstadt coming back. M is for Mama. She's amazing. She was here last year. She was one of our favorite speakers. And so, of course, we had to have her again. And then adding to the motherhood conversation, we've got Hillary Morgan Ferrer. She is the author of the very popular Mama Bear Apologetics books. Many of you have read her books in your small group at your church, and for good reason. She is so good at equipping moms to be theologians, to be apologetics experts for their children, equipping children to confront really difficult questions and issues that go on in the world. We're also having Elisa Childers, Ginger Duggar-Vuolo. We've got Shauna Holman, Taylor Dukes on a health panel. We've got Katie Faust, and then leading us in worship is Francesca Battistelli. And then, of course, yours truly. Y'all, there is not another women's theology, apologetics, worship conference like this one out there. There's not. I hope that there will be a ton one day, but unfortunately, a lot of women's ministry is very emotional. And this is not an emotions-led conference. This is a truth-led conference. So come by yourself, come with your friends, come if you're just curious about Christianity, come if you've been a Christian for 50 years. You will be equipped, you will be encouraged, you will make friends with like-minded believing women. It is going to be incredible. I'm trying to save you from FOMO by telling you to go ahead, get your tickets right now. Go to sharethearrows.com. That's sharethearrows.com. Dad, welcome back to the show. It's been a little while.
It has been. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah. Okay, so Trump had a really good weekend this weekend. A lot of things accomplished, right?
No question. In fact, our mutual friend, Mr. Florence, says it's probably the best weekend in the history of President Weekend. So
yes,
it was a really, really good weekend on all the stuff that he got done. You know, they negotiated the China thing for 90 days where they're going to reduce the tariffs on U.S. goods from we're going to do 145 down to 30%. And then China's reducing ours from 125% down to 10%. I mean, that's a big deal.
So that's a good deal for us, a better deal for us than it is for them, which means that Trump negotiated well.
But we buy a lot of stuff from them, as you know. Yeah. So this will help a lot of the retail outlets that bring products over for Americans to buy. So and I think that the more you can have good trade deals, the less likely there will be military or other types of conflicts between those two countries.
And Trump has always understood that, right?
Correct. Absolutely.
And so do you think that the fact that he got China to come down to 10% on our goods, that it indicates that everyone who fear-mongered about the tariffs and said this will never work, that they were wrong?
Oh, I absolutely think they're wrong. And I've thought they were wrong since day one. If you look at what's going on right now, I wrote this down, so I looked through it. But initially, China and Canada retaliated. You know, they raised their tariffs. Now Canada's the only one left, and they're not going to last on that, as you know. 14 other countries are already in negotiations with the U.S., and these are the major countries, okay, on working a deal out. They're in negotiation. Seven additional ones have offered concessions already from the tariffs that they put on our goods. And Mexico, oddly enough, even though we've raised tariffs on them, have never retaliated against us on that. So that's really kind of interesting. So I think the ball is moving. As I said, I think the last time I was on the show, Allie, that I believe most all of this will be settled by the end of the summer.
Okay.
And we'll have deals that, maybe not as good as everybody wants them, but they'll be better deals than we have today.
Do you think that, and for people who don't remember, we did a whole episode about tariffs, I think a couple episodes about tariffs, but Trump raised tariffs on all of these countries to try to make our deals more equitable for both sides, because he has always said that America is getting the short end of the stick. That is part of why we don't have as much American manufacturing as we did before, because we've sold out to China and all of these other countries. Trump just sees this as making it fair. And to kind of make a political point, Progressive Canada, as you said, they said, well, we're not backing down. You're not going to bully us. We're going to raise our tariffs too. And it's become this whole thing. And you had progressives here saying, oh, well, this is just horrible. It's going to be horrible for our economy. Well, as we just said, Trump is proving all of them wrong. However, Trump's poll numbers are pretty low right now. How do you think that he is dealing with that?
Well, I don't think there's been any new poll numbers that have come out since the weekend. So we'll see how they come out this week. I think that most second-term presidents don't put much emphasis on polls because it's their last time around. They're going to do what they think is right. Most second-term presidents, to the extent they can, have done that. Now, we may disagree with a lot of that, but that's what they've done. So I don't think they think about polls too much. Now, the people that are running for office again in 26 and 28 certainly do, and they're the ones that are nervous about things like this. I think all that'll come out. Now, remember, you're always going to have 40+% of the people that are going to be against Trump on everything he does. They start with an anti-Trump base of at least 40%. And then any fluctuation that people get nervous about, and certainly people have been nervous about their investments, then that will bring that number up to close to 50%. Going back to the trade deal, though, if you look at what happened with the UK, with the United Kingdom's trade deal, that is a model for what I think will happen. They have got reciprocal 10% tariffs on goods. So if they sell Scotch whiskey over here, we put a 10% tariff on them. If we sell bourbon over there, they put a 10% tariff on us. So that's all he's ever asked for. They also reduced tariffs from 25% to 10% on automobiles, the first 100,000 automobiles. Used to be a 25% tariff. So if you bought a $50,000 car, all right, that was let's say a Tahoe, and you bought that, or you did that in London, or in England, then that was going to cost you another what is that? $12,500.
Wow.
And so now that's going to be just 10%. And we'll do the same thing, I'm sure, for their Land Rovers and things like that come over here. And they removed all the tariffs on U.S. steel so that we can sell steel over there, and a bunch of other agriculture products. Our people believe that they can have a broader opportunity to market those over there. So that's the model. Now, not every country will be exactly the same, but that'll be the reciprocal part is the part that Trump's been beating on, and the part that actually polls the best.
When do you think we will start feeling the fullness of the benefits of these trade deals going our way?
I think it's the end of the year before all that comes in. Now, the China and the American 90-day, I guess not pause, but reduction, that starts tomorrow, Wednesday. Okay. And so I think we'll start feeling those right away. The companies that are buying those products will start feeling those right away.
Yeah. And do you think that will translate really quickly to lower prices in retail shops?
Well, you hope so. But, what happens is a retailer that does it will probably drive the market, but the ones that don't, they'll hold back as long as people are willing to buy.
Yeah.
It's a supply and demand issue.
It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to lower prices. They'll only lower prices if people haven't been buying their stuff.
Yeah. And if another retailer does, let's say Walmart lowers theirs. Well, on the same items, other places like Target and others will have to do that.
Yeah.
So we'll see who blinks first.
Man, I should have stopped shopping over the past few weeks
Yeah,
to teach those retailers a
you would
lesson.
have, right?
I'm the data point that they're looking at. She'll still buy it even if we raise prices. All right. Anything else we need to know about tariffs?
I don't think so. The other thing I think people don't realize is the tariffs that we have had and put on these countries, that has raised revenue for us. And that revenue will go against some of the, tax cuts that we want to put in place. That helps pay for things like no tax on tips. It helps pay for things like extending the tax cuts that President Trump did in 2017. So there is revenue coming in. I haven't seen the exact numbers as to how much that is, but there's revenue coming in from that.
Okay, so Trump's numbers right now are historically, compared to past presidents in their second term, really low. It might be one of the lowest. I know you said that he doesn't care as much because this is his second term, but obviously someone like J.D. Vance is looking at this. Yep. People who are up for election soon are looking at this. The other accomplishments that happened over the weekend, we can talk about those. And also I want to know if you think those will help bump his numbers up at all.
Well, I think they will. I think it'll bump his numbers up, especially if they continue. It'll be interesting to see if any new polling comes out in the next week or so and things have continued to get better. I think, he's over in Saudi Arabia right now trying to get them to move from a $600 billion investment in the U.S. to a $1 trillion investment. And the leverage we have is they want to buy our military equipment.
Yeah.
And so that's the leverage. So those types of things will be positively reflected in the polls. Yeah, because they're against Iran.
Okay.
They're anti-Iran. So we have to, it's the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Okay.
And again, that's a whole tribal thing, right? And I forget Iran's, of course, Persian, but Saudi Arabia is not a friend of Iran. But some of the other things that happened over the weekend, Monday, he signed a executive order saying that the U.S. will have most favored nation status in the purchase of prescription drugs.
Yeah.
Now, that only applies to Medicare and Medicaid, things that the federal government can control. He can't force private companies, but that is a huge deal. Now, it doesn't mean that, let's say that for a pill in UK, they're paying $1 and we're paying $1.50. It doesn't mean we're going to pay $1. It probably means that we're both going to pay $1.25.
Okay.
That's what will happen. Because they won't, the drug companies can't go all the way down to that because we've been funding a lot of their research and development expense. So they're going to have to, all President Trump is saying, again, reciprocal. Let's spread that all over the world. Don't make us pay for all of it, right?
Right.
And so that is going to be a big deal for seniors. There's no question about that. Or people that are on disability, people that are poor. That is a huge, huge deal. And the average taxpayer, because it reduces the cost that the rest of the taxpayers have to put in for Medicare and Medicaid. That is a big, big deal.
And if you can just do that by executive order, why haven't past presidents done that?
Well, I don't know why we haven't done that. And I don't know all the steps to make that happen. But what I think he is saying to those drug companies, you better pay attention. And it's interesting because when he announced that initially, the prices on drug stocks tanked yesterday. But then by the end of the day, when everybody kind of realized as to how it would work, then they went back up.
Yeah. So as you've always said, like the market is an indicator of what is psychologically going on with people. It's not necessarily an indicator of how much money we have or where money is going,
That's
right?
Yep.
And then there was India, Pakistan. They were getting ready to fight each other, and Trump stepped in and helped.
In fact, they had already had a little bit of that going on. I think Pakistan there had been a suicide bombing or some type of bombing that had killed like 20 people. And then India did some retaliation, although Pakistan said they shot down all their drones. I don't know if that's true or not. But then over the weekend, Trump called them both and basically said, cut it out. I'm sure there were a lot of other things going on, but he negotiated a ceasefire. Now, those countries have never liked each other, but so what's so important about that is that both of those countries are nuclear powers. And they all have the ability to push the button, right? Now, they don't push the button because they know it's mutual destruction, right? I mean, there'll be no India or no Pakistan left. But he did that, and that's a really good thing.
First sponsor for the day is Fellowship Home Loans. Okay, navigating mortgages, buying a house right now is just a lot. It's really overwhelming, and this process is always overwhelming to a degree, but with rising prices, so many options, it is really tough to know who to trust when it comes to managing your loan or refinancing your home. You want to make sure that you are working with people who value integrity, honesty, hard work, and that is what you will get when you work with Fellowship Home Loans. This is mortgage lending by the book. The people who own this company have a biblical worldview. They are simply trying to glorify God in everything they do. They have a passion for mortgages, and they want to help you buy or refinance your home. I've talked to these guys. They are the real deal. Their customer service ratings are just out of this world because they care so much, not just about pleasing their customer, but pleasing the Lord in everything they do. It is getting more and more important in this polarized world that we live in to work with people that actually align with your values, that are trying to advance God's kingdom. That is what you will get with Fellowship Home Loans. If you go to fellowshiphomeloans.com/Allie, my listeners will get a $500 credit at closing. Go to fellowshiphomeloans.com/Allie. Nationwide Mortgage Bankers DBA Fellowship Home Loans, Equal Housing Lender, NMLS number 819382. Let's move to immigration, where Trump is doing better than past administrations, obviously, a deportation and cracking down on that. Before we get to the whole refugee scandal of the South African refugees, how do you think Trump is doing when it comes to deportations and following through on his promises?
95% down from 2024, month by month. So I would say he is
94% down what?
Illegal crossings.
Illegal crossings.
Yeah. And then so that also, I think, not only that's the biggest thing. Okay. The biggest thing is, the first thing you do when you don't want a hole is you stop digging. So he stopped the digging, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And then what you do is then you try to clean it up. And that's what Tom Holloman and his people are doing. And I think he's done a really good job with that. The challenges that we have is that we do, unfortunately, in some ways, I hate to say this, but unfortunately, there are protections for people that are even here illegally. All right. And if we don't follow those processes, okay, then the courts are going to stop us. They're bound to stop us because of the way the law works. Now, you can change the law, but that's not happening right now. So I think we have to be aggressively careful. All right. We have to be aggressive, but we have to be careful that we don't create problems of our own, because the majority of the people still do not want illegal immigrants here. Yeah. They want them to come through the system legally. Mm-hmm. And so I think he's doing a good job on that.
I think a lot of people on the left, they might not even realize that they've started to conflate illegal immigrants with immigrants, because you hear them say the right is anti-immigration or anti-immigrant or whatever. Mm-hmm. And some of that is purposeful. Some people, I think, might not really think about the difference of someone cutting the line, getting here illegally, but all people, I think, want those who are committing crimes and are here illegally deported. This is one of those 95-5 issues that Trump is absolutely right on.
Think about this. Think about if you were at Disney World and one of those, lines that they have in the queue, and somebody just walked way up in front of you and got in front of you. The left, if that's a liberal person standing in the back of the line, they would not like that. But that's exactly what's happening to even something even more important.
Yes.
And plus the fact the money, the taxpayer dollars that are spent on illegal immigrants is astounding. Even for states, especially for border states like Texas, where they have to be in our education system. The federal law says that we must educate them if they're here. I mean, that's super, super. That's $17,000 per child. All right. $17,000 per year per child. And then also our healthcare system. And all that money comes right back to you and me and other taxpayers that we have to pay.
This is the propaganda that the Trump administration and a lot of conservatives are fighting against. For example, there were some ICE raids in Nashville, Tennessee over the past few days, and the Nashville Banner cites someone comparing these ICE raids to what happened in Nazi Germany. And actually, I saw this all over X as ICE is going into these communities. They're getting out the people who are not supposed to be there, getting them ready for deportation. Sometimes this does include children because they don't want to separate the families.
Right. Yeah. Which do you want? Right?
I know they're trying to keep the families together.
Right.
It's not that they think this 3-year-old poses a threat, but they don't want the 3-year-old separated from the mom,
Right.
which is, it's better for them to be together in Mexico than to be separated. And so you've got a lot of people comparing this to Nazi Germany. And that's what I'm saying when I think some people are genuinely confused, but they're being manipulated by this. Because if you don't believe that ICE has a right to deport people, then you don't believe we have a right to have a country. Yeah. I mean, there's no such thing as citizenship if you can't get people out who are here illegally.
And the Jewish people in Germany were German citizens. Remember that. They were German citizens. They were not invading that country like a lot of these illegal immigrants are. The other thing that happened is that when in these countries like Venezuela, Nicaragua, a couple of more where Biden put this rule in that said, hey, if you're a citizen there and you want to come here, you can come, okay, because those are bad countries, which is true. But he didn't vet anybody. That's the problem. He didn't vet anybody. The idea is maybe noble, okay? But unless you vet people, and the Clinton administration didn't do that very well either with all the people from Somalia, which happened, which going on in Minnesota and all those other places. Yeah. And so it's one thing to have noble ideas, but if you don't have the process to make sure the people coming in are the people that are good for the country, then it creates havoc.
That's why you never judge a policy by its stated intentions.
No.
Okay, I think this kind of reveals where a lot of the far left progressives actually are when it comes to their motives behind wanting illegal immigration. This South African refugee story. This is according to the Associated Press, obviously not a right-wing outlet. The Trump administration admitted 59 white South Africans, known as Afrikaners. They had to make sure that they put that in there, into the U.S. as refugees yesterday, citing claims of persecution and violence in post-apartheid South Africa. The move was welcomed by some U.S. officials, but sparked international criticism and concerns over inconsistency with broader refugee policy. So we'll put up some pictures, but the Afrikaners arrived at Dulles Airport on May 12th. President Trump claimed that they were fleeing genocide in South Africa, that white farmers are being killed. And all of this is true, by the way. In 2022, there were over 300 attacks on white-owned farms, resulting in 50 murders. Torture is common in these attacks, with Afrikaans, their Bibles being left open on their dismembered bodies. There's actually this highway in South Africa with all of these crosses that are honoring all of the white farmers that have been murdered. This is SOT 3. And they're very open about this. Some members of the South African government at an economic freedom fighters rally in May 2024, you had crowds of the Black South Africans saying, kill the Boer, kill the Boer. And the Boer is the term that they use to describe the descendants of Dutch, German, French settlers who arrived in South Africa. Here's SOT 4. Okay, so they're screaming, kill the Boer. Mm-hmm. And this is what is happening to a lot of these white farmers, and Trump is bringing them in as refugees. And yet you had people on the left, as we'll talk about in a second, very upset about this.
Well, it's total hypocrisy. I've been to South Africa a couple of times, and it's, the population is about 90 to 95% Black and about 5% white. So apartheid was awful, as we both would agree. However, what's happened since that time is the government in a lot of these countries, not only South Africa, the country, but next door neighboring countries like Zimbabwe and Tanzania, they have nationalized a lot of the land. So they've basically taken the land away from the farmers, or they've been run off by violence, like you've said. And so they are absolutely at risk. There's no question about that. They do not live in a country where they can be safe, in my opinion. And so this is no different than people that are truly being brutalized in Venezuela or in Nicaragua or what are the others we're talking about. It's all because of the color of their skin, partly, but mostly because it's Donald Trump that's doing it, or it's a Republican that's doing it.
Yep. The Episcopal Church, through its Episcopal Migration Ministries, terminated on Monday, May 12th, terminated its 40-year-long refugee resettlement program with the U.S. government due to, quote, moral objections to resettling white Afrikaners from South Africa. The church's decision stemmed from its commitment to racial justice and its historical ties to the Anglican Church of Southern Africa, which opposed apartheid. So this speaks to the ideology that BLM has here. Because something bad happened to some Black people a long time ago, the people who are alive today, the white people alive today, who might not even be related to the white people who own slaves, they have to pay the price for it through reparations, through unequal justice system, different kinds of sentencing that disproportionately hurts white people and rewards Black people based on the color of their skin. And that's the same thing that is happening in South Africa. The same thing happened in Zimbabwe. It never leads to liberation or equality or justice. It leads to chaos, and it leads to injustice and murder. And this supposedly Christian institution is saying, we can't offer the same compassion to these people because they're white and something bad happened in South Africa decades ago.
Yeah, it's just totally ridiculous. But again, I applaud Trump, again, for stepping out and doing something that nobody else has done. This was going on in earlier administrations as well. This has been going on since 1992 when apartheid was defeated, which was the right thing to do. And it became Black controlled for the government and what have you, which it's majority control. That's fine. But a lot of these things have been happening to these farmers since then, and no administration has really done anything about it. So I applaud him for stepping up and not being afraid of the left on something like this. And I think we should, be open to doing this. You and I both know a guy named Chuck Bentley. Chuck and his ministry there in Africa a lot. And I've heard testimonies from some of the people that were farmers over there on how they got run off their land. And I mean, it's just unbelievable. Yeah. And, it's something that I think that we have to participate in. And I'm actually very surprised that, and maybe they have, but like the UK should be doing this. A lot of those people came from the UK. UK ran South Africa and a lot of those South African countries for a long time. What are they doing about this, right?
Yeah.
What is Holland doing about this?
It is also the belief that Western countries, or people who even come from Western countries, that they need to pay the price for colonialism today. This Episcopalian organization, the president said, we can't in good conscience facilitate the resettlement of those whose communities upheld apartheid. So these people directly did not uphold apartheid.
He's not even trying to say that.
He doesn't even know if their ancestors did, but someone who had the color of their skin decades ago might have participated in that. So they have to be punished today. But we don't hold people from Pakistan or Iran or Iraq who want to immigrate, or Afghanistan who want to go to the UK. They never have to pay the price for what Al-Qaeda did or what other terrorist organizations did.
And if we checked his ancestry closely, we'd probably find something on him.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, we probably all have people in our backgrounds that didn't conduct themselves in the way they should.
Yeah, that is true. The history of the world is the oppressed versus the oppressor. If you go down far enough in your ancestry, you will find enslaved and enslavers, oppressed and oppressors, poor and rich.
No question.
That's the truth of it. And that's why the gospel is so beautiful, by the way, because all of us are responsible for our own sin. We're dead in our sin apart from Christ and can be made alive by grace through faith in him. That is the radical message that gets rid of all of this tribal resentment there. Next sponsor is Good Ranchers. So I have some bad news and then some good news. Some bad news is that by the time this show ends, another family farm in the United States will shut down. This is happening every day across this country because it is so difficult now for homegrown meat to compete against the cheaper options that are being imported from abroad. But the farming and ranching industry in the United States is the backbone of American society for so many reasons. If you want to be a part of revitalizing this industry, making sure that these family farms that really care about their product, that care about their livestock, that care about their meat, if you want to make sure that they can remain open now and generations to come, you should be getting your meat at Good Ranchers. I love our Good Ranchers meat. We have our Better Than Organic chicken. We've got our Wagyu beef. We've got our seafood. We've got our steaks. We eat this all every night. Let's see, last night I had my Better Than Organic chicken that I wrapped in some of our Good Ranchers bacon. Had some cheddar on top of that. It was so good. When I tell you we rely on Good Ranchers pretty much every night of the week, I'm telling you the truth, and I'm so thankful for it. This is also a Christian, conservative, America-loving family that owns this company, so it's just a win all around. Father's Day, get the father in your life, whether it's your husband or your dad, a box of Good Ranchers meat. You can get them the Allie Stuckey custom box. It's got all my favorites in there. When you subscribe, also, you get $40 off. GoodRanchers.com/Allie, code Allie. Okay, speaking of tribal resentment, we've got Jasmine Crockett, who operates out of a worldview of truly tribal resentment. We know that she hates Donald Trump. At a House Oversight Committee's Department of Government Efficiency DOGE subcommittee, this was about the trans sports issue. She accused Republicans of using the hearing to target trans athletes. Okay, so here's what she's got to say. Saw one.
I just learned today at 44 years old that the Republicans are going to be the ones to save women. The same Republicans that have been, say, for women's reproductive acts, or the same Republicans that have stood for the Equal Rights Act, which would hopefully get women to equal pay, or the same Republicans that just this Congress voted for the SAVE Act, which we know would disenfranchise women from even being able to vote. But let me tell you, they are our saviors, and so I am so happy to be here today, because otherwise I would not have an idea that I had a savior in the Republicans.
Okay, so if anyone didn't detect that, it's sarcasm.
Well, yeah, it's not only, it's idiotic sarcasm. You know, first of all, she's probably the most racist person in the entire legislature. If not, she's in the top 5 for sure. And she's never going to get anything done. She didn't get anything done in the Texas House. She's not going to get anything done in the U.S. Congress. But if you think about what she just said, okay, now she talks about reproductive rights, but yet she's alive. I bet she's thankful her mom didn't abort her, right? She talked about the SAVE Act. She talked that, you know, women aren't going to be able to vote. I mean, it's just...
That's just not true. We've debunked that.
Totally unbelievable. It's just unbelievably not true. And, but yet, she's a darling of the left-wing media. And,
she's one of those, the Democrats now, they're all cussing. Have you noticed that?
Oh yeah. They've been told to do that. I'm reading about that. That's kind of their consultants are telling them to be more real, more like the average American. Yeah.
Is that attractive to people?
No, it's not attractive to most people.
Maybe to some Democrats.
Now you can tell me about your generation. It's not attractive to my generation.
Well, I don't think so. I mean, it's not attractive to me, but I also, loathe their worldview.
I expect for people in those positions to be more professional.
Yes.
I mean, that's what we expect. I mean, we've elected them, right? Those are our leaders. They're supposed to have some type of dignity.
Yeah.
and what have you. And
Trump called her low IQ, which is just obviously true. It's just
obviously true,
true.
although I'm not sure you should say that either. He should say that either.
Really?
Doesn't do any good.
You just said that what she said was idiotic.
Yeah, but I'm not the president of the United States.
Okay, but sometimes true things need to be said.
And he should leave that to you and me.
Yeah, he could leave that to you and me. That is true. But when it comes to crassness, no, I don't want someone on the Republican side to do that. Like, I hate abortion. Would I want a Republican to go out there and say, I effing hate abortion? No, I would say that's unnecessary.
Right.
You know, it's just not necessary, and it's very classless. Okay, speaking of Congress, what is going on with the budget bill? The Republicans released some details Sunday, May 11th. It's referred to as Trump's big, beautiful bill, includes over $4 trillion in tax cuts and $1.5 trillion in spending reductions over a decade, according to Bloomberg.
Yeah, well, my good friend in Congress that just got up there is on the Energy and Commerce Committee, which most of this goes through. So it's a big part of this goes through there. And in fact, one of the parts that's in there that's controversial is the defunding of Planned Parenthood, which don't know if that's going to make it all the way through or not. But I think we're getting to the end of the road on this. Now, what's happening is, and you're going to hear people talk about this, I want your audience to understand, a lot of the spending that's going on now is spending that was approved by Biden in the last Congress, okay? So we don't have the ability to control that. Mechanisms have to work itself out. Until this bill passes and we eliminate some of those things, that's why the deficit continues to grow, all right? Is a lot of this program that was under the so-called Inflation Reduction Act and all that, a bunch of spending that we can't cut off until we get this bill passed. And so and also what's not included in there, although I think Trump is trying to get them to put it in there, is the money that we're getting from the tariffs, is to have the scoring people to make sure that they include that as well. And
Okay.
I think we're getting through to the end of that. I absolutely think it's going to pass the House. And then the Senate will be able to pass it with only 51 votes because this is called budget reconciliation. Now, whether or not the House I think the goal is for the House to vote on that this month in May. Whether that gets pushed a few days or not, I don't know, but that would be the goal, to get it, because they want to have this passed when they go back home for their summer recess later in the summer to be able to talk to their folks about.
Yeah, Speaker Mike Johnson said he wants this done by Memorial Day, which I'm sure that they're all hoping for. So the Congressional Budget Office, they are pointing out that 8.6 million people may no longer have Medicaid coverage by 2034 if this whole proposal passes. What do you think about that?
Well, first of all, I think that's it might be that there are some people that are on Medicaid that shouldn't be on Medicaid. So there may be some of that there are loopholes in all of the entitlement bills that allows people that weren't intended to be receive benefits. So I think that could be some of it. Some of that, though, is going to be determined by the states, because Medicaid is essentially run by each state, and every state does it differently. And so what I believe they're probably saying is that, well, if we try to reduce our funding for Medicare, that means states are going to have to cut people off the rolls. And that's not necessarily true. So again, it's a supposition.
Okay. So we're hopeful.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think it's going to pass. I don't think there's any question it'll pass. There'll be some more negotiations. And listen, folks, it will not be everything you want or everything I want, but it will be much better than what we've had.
Okay. That's true of everything that
Just
Trump
about.
does. Okay, let's go to the state level, state legislature. I had a conversation yesterday about what's going on in the Texas legislature when it comes to abortion. And you've got some people who are upset that it seems like some in the Texas legislature don't want to take up a bill, have a bill move forward that would allow for equal protection of babies inside the womb. And what is meant by that is having the woman have legal responsibility or legal accountability for the action that she has knowingly taken. And we're not getting into a debate about that philosophically today, because I've done that, and we'll link past episodes and you can kind of hear the back and forth on that. But when it comes to this kind of thing, a bill that would punish women for knowingly having abortions that we know could be very unpopular. Like, how does this kind of thing work? Like, how does a bill like this get passed through?
Well, let me remind people of what Texas has done. Okay, 2013, my first year in the legislature, we had a 20-hour public hearing, 20 hours. And I'll just tell you, all our pro-life friends, the majority of the witnesses, the public witnesses, were against the bill. Okay, so pro-life friends.
What was the bill?
The bill was to stop abortions after 20 weeks, because before that, it was you could wait till longer in Texas. Okay, so we passed the bill.
So pre-2013, you could have an abortion through probably 24 weeks.
At least 24 weeks.
Wow.
And so we put that at 20 weeks, okay, which wasn't as much as we wanted, but it was what we could get at the time. And then in 2021, two things happened, which were really brilliant. One was passing the heartbeat bill, and that was put forth and supported by a really good friend of mine who's a doctor down there, Dr. Greg Bonin, and he got on the front mic and explained how babies at that age can feel pain. He's a neurosurgeon, so he knows about pain, and it was very moving, very moving. And then also that year, which people didn't realize, is they passed something called a trigger bill, which was super smart. And a lot of states have followed that said if Roe v. Wade was ever overturned, then this bill automatically becomes effective and that no abortions in Texas. You know what? They were the first state to do that. Texas has been the leader in these issues from day one. Now, there's a lot of states that do just as well and maybe even better in some ways. But what happens is that any legislator can file a bill, and there's a bill filed relating to that's called equal protection. Now, what it would have done is if a lady in Texas has an abortion and she's found out in whatever way, she would be subject to the same penalties that someone that had committed murder against someone who was already born. That in Texas, that could be up to the death penalty, up to including the death penalty. And so bills were filed to do that. But the challenge is that if you're the author of the bill and you really want your bill to pass, you've got to go work that bill. And you've got to have 76 other people in the House and at least 16 in the Senate to say yes. And if you don't have that, the bill's not going to pass. And so in this particular situation, this bill did not even have the votes in the committee that it was assigned to. I talked to the chairman of that committee this morning, who's a good friend of mine, John Smithy. We served together. He's been in the House for a long time. He's from Amarillo, as pro-life, as conservative as you would want somebody to be. But he said, Ron, we didn't have the votes, and we were getting physical threats against us from both sides, from the pro-life people and pro-abortion people. Yeah. We were getting physical threats. Our committee members, we had to call DPS in our offices to protect us. And so I'll just tell you folks out there, that is no way to get your legislation passed. If you're going to threaten a legislator, all I can tell you is that what's going to happen is they're going to, smile to your face, and then behind your back, they're going to work against what you want, because people don't like to be threatened.
And obviously no one that I know in the pro-life fight would ever do that, whether they're an abolitionist or they say middle of the road pro-life or whatever. No one, we would never do that. But there are extremes on both sides of any issue.
There are individuals.
And it's just not effective. It's counterproductive.
And so that's the reason this particular bill didn't go through. Also, Lieutenant Governor Patrick, who's on the Senate side, has said we're not going to take up a bill that's going to punish women that have an abortion. Now, you and I might disagree with that. There's got to be some balance in here, because we believe the unborn is a human being. We know they are. And so they need protection too. And the legislature has given them a lot of protection, but they haven't been willing to cross that threshold yet. And I understand it. I mean, when you're making public policy in a political environment, it's very, very difficult. It's not as black and white as we want it to be. And, the leader in the House is very conservative.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the speaker, because I've heard some, criticism about him and, his conservative bona fides. So what do you think about our current speaker?
Well, Dustin Burrows came into the House the session after I did. And I've known him very well. He and I remain good friends. Super conservative guy. In fact, he was head of what they call the Calendars Committee, and the Calendars Committee determines what gets to the floor of the House for a vote. And he was chair of that in 2021 when the 6-week abortion ban and the trigger bill got to the floor. So if he wanted to be anti-abortion, pro-abortion, he would have killed those bills. He could have done it. He's very, very pro-life, and I am quite sure that he agrees with protecting unborn children in the most unique way. I don't know his involvement with this. He probably wasn't involved with this particularly at all. He's very conservative. What's happened is the people that didn't get who they wanted for speaker this time, who's actually, if you look at kind of all the scoring systems, he's much less conservative, Mr. Cook was, than Speaker Burrows is. They just think everything's bad. And that's what happens. You know that I experienced that when I was in the legislature. I was the 13th most conservative person in the House as scored by Rice University, but some of these, far fringe groups scored me an F.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just crazy. And I did the school choice bill.
Yeah.
I did the, no boys and girls bathrooms bill, but yet I was, not conservative enough. And so
politics is tough.
It's a tough business.
World. And you really can't ever please anyone. You make as many friends as you can because you want to get things done. But you also have to know you're never going to be friends with everyone because some people don't want to be your friend.
Yeah, and it's a business made up of people. So if you're a legislator and I'm a legislator and you've been trashing me the whole time for something that you don't like about one of the things that I'm doing, now not talking to me privately, but I'm talking about publicly, and then you come to me and want me to do something for you, it's going to be very, very hard for me to say yes to that. Now, maybe I should, but we're human.
You're a person.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So,
yep, that is true. And that's true
But I'm proud of the Texas legislature for all the stuff they do. So
yeah, that's true in everything. That's good life advice and everything. That's true in media too. It is hard to, even if you agree with what someone says, but that person did something to you, it's hard to, publicly praise them. It's just how it goes. All right, let me tell you about a very special sponsor, and that is Preborn. Preborn is a network of clinics across the country that helps women make a life-affirming choice for their baby by providing free services like free ultrasounds, free prenatal vitamins, counseling for parenting and adoption. They're just amazing, and I want to read you a short testimonial from one of their clients named Brielle. She was ready to take the abortion pill. She wanted to end her pregnancy. But when the abortion pill never came in the mail, she decided to go to a pregnancy clinic to see what her options were. After receiving a free ultrasound provided by Preborn, an incredible moment happened. Not only on the ultrasound did her baby seem to wave at her with his little hand, but she also realized that this little baby boy was what she had been praying for. So if you go to preborn.com/Allie, you are sponsoring moments like Brielle's. You are saving the lives of these babies. You are helping minister to their moms. Go to preborn.com/Allie to donate. That's preborn.com/Allie. Okay, if someone doesn't like what their legislator is doing, what their legislature is doing in any state, what is the most effective way to communicate with their lawmakers?
It's interesting. I had an email over the weekend from a lady in Connecticut who is concerned about Connecticut legislators trying to regulate homeschool because of an incident that happened years ago. And she was telling me about, what do we do, that type of thing, because he's really afraid. And so what my advice to her was the same advice I give today, and that is you should contact your legislator, but you have to do that with respect. Now, the best way to do that is go down and visit with them. If you go to their office, they will see you. All right. They will see you. But if you're going to go in there and threaten them, or you're going to get on social media and threaten and say, we're going to vote you out of, that just doesn't work. Okay. You have to, and you also have to offer a solution. Let's say that there's something you don't like in a piece of legislation. All right. Now there's other people that like it. So you need to be able to offer a solution. A solution isn't always just no. It's, hey, well, maybe we could do this. You know, I hear what they're trying to get to. Maybe we could do this or that or what have you. Like, for example, in Connecticut, it's not the homeschooling situation that's the problem. It's the Department of Children and Family Services that didn't do their job when these parents were abusing their child.
Yeah.
Now, that you don't need to, regulate homeschool because of that. You need to get that part of it fixed, okay? But we have to go in with solutions, and you have to be respectful for it. People are always they listen to constituents, but you have to be respectful. Most of these, like in Texas, these guys and gals make $600 a month. All right. They're not doing this for fame or fortune. Most of them are doing it because they truly want to serve their public.
Yeah. Is there any point to a Republican voter complaining to or talking with a Democrat legislator who they know is not going to be pro-life and is not going to agree with them? Is there any point to trying to sway them at all?
I think the point, and that's a really good question, because the reason you do that is so you can understand their argument. You don't go to them to try to say,
the legislators' argument.
You don't go to them to try to say, I want you to believe me. You go to that person to say, explain to me how you come to this position. You and I are obviously at different positions. Tell me your argument. What's your argument that would favor, abortions up until birth?
Mm-hmm. And what would be the point of that? Why do you want to know their argument?
Because once you know the other person's argument, you can argue better against it.
Is there any point in trying to persuade them in that moment to plant a seed?
Well, I think there's a point in asking them questions that they might go later and think about.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what you do.
If a Democrat came to you when you were a Republican legislator, that's how you would have wanted them to approach you. Because you would have never agreed with them if they said, hey, we want you to be against this 20-week bill, or we want boys and girls bathrooms. You never would have been persuaded by them, but maybe you would have appreciated them making the effort.
Like if she would have said, let's say a lady came to me that was a Democrat legislature or whatever, and they came and talked to me, or a constituent, whatever, and she had a very traumatic pregnancy experience, whatever that was, rape, whatever. I would empathize with that. It wouldn't change my ultimate position, but I would empathize with that. And it's better to know where they're coming from than to just, no, you're stupid. Right. Unless it's Jasmine Crockett, and we can do that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's close out with, can you give us a life lesson from the Little Red Wagon today? I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Oh, no. Well, the lesson from the Little Red Wagon on this one is that it's always make sure that you ask the next uncomfortable question. And that doesn't mean that you demand, but you should ask that question that maybe is going to make you uncomfortable in front of your legislator or whomever it is, but you have to figure out how to do it in the right way with respect and what have you. But don't stop because you're afraid. Most people stop short of what they really want to know because they're afraid to ask the question and how the response might be. Remember, you can never control somebody else's response. You can only control the way in which you conduct yourself. But the only way to get to the other side of things is you have to get out of that comfort zone into an uncomfortable area.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes the uncomfortable question is something you're asking yourself.
That's exactly right. Oh, that's even the harder ones.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Ouch.
Am I in this position because I really couldn't control the situation, or what did I?
Yeah, what did I?
What did I do?
Exactly right.
That is tough. Okay, Dad. Well, thank you so much. Everyone should get your book, Life Lessons from the Little Red Wagon. Oh, wait.
One last thing.
You will give a free book a free book of mine.
I'm going to give away today, Allie. First of all, I want to ask you one question. This is not something for you to answer today unless you know the answer, but I want you to think about it.
Okay.
Where did the term rest in peace come from?
Okay. I don't know.
Okay. So let's think about that. Because it relates to your Catholicism episodes the last few weeks.
True.
Okay.
Yeah, I could see that. I never really thought about it.
Think about that one.
Yeah.
But even more fun than that is, you'll notice that I have a shirt on with an unusual logo, which most people, in fact, very few people will know what this logo stands for. And now, folks, you cannot look this up on AI and ask them, take a picture of it. It doesn't work like that. Now, I'm going to depend on your honesty, okay? But the first person that gets back in touch with the show that tells us what this logo stands for will get a free signed copy of Life Lessons from the Little Red Wagon and a free signed copy of Toxic Empathy, courtesy of me.
Okay.
So let's see who
Can't
really
look it up.
knows. You cannot look it up. Come on.
You just have to know.
You just have to know.
And if
You
you
have to
don't
have seen
know-
it before. If you don't know, you probably hadn't been there. If you hadn't been there, you probably don't need to know.
Okay.
So we'll see
You
how
can
that
guess. You can put a random guess
Oh,
out
yeah,
there,
please
but
put
you
a
can't look it
random
up.
guess. It's pretty funny. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much, Dad. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Proud of you.
All right. Hope you guys enjoyed that conversation. Let me tell you about Blaze TV and why you need to subscribe. We are always dealing with big tech, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and it is a struggle for conservatives to talk about the things that we want to talk about. It's a struggle for Christians to talk about the things that we want to talk about in a very honest way. We are constantly having to navigate all of their changing rules to make sure that our stuff isn't getting suppressed or just straight up taken down. So when you subscribe to Blaze TV, you are protecting us, but you are also protecting your connection to us, your ability to be able to watch our content. And you're not just getting what you get on YouTube when you subscribe to Blaze TV. You are also getting all of our subscriber exclusive content that only exists behind the paywall. So support us, support free thinking, critical thinking. Go to blazetv.com, blazetv.com/Allie, and use code Allie for $20 off. blazetv.com/Allie, code Allie.